All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I am incredibly excited to welcome you to a webinar on the value of curation, which is based on some really interesting research conducted here at the Data Curation Network. Now, before we dive into, again, this really amazing content, just a couple of housekeeping notes. First, this meeting is being recorded. We will trim out the Q&A/discussion stuff if I forget to stop the recording, so don't worry about that. We do ask that you keep your cameras off during the presentation. That's just to help make sure that everybody can have a pleasant experience with the webinar, and also remain muted unless you're asking a question during the discussion session. You are welcome to use the chat freely. Please let me know if you need help accessing that. I believe, Sophia's going to tell me if I'm wrong. I believe we have closed captions on. If we don't, we will do so momentarily. I did put into the chat the link to the Data Curation Network's Code of Conduct. We do expect that all participants of the webinar will follow this Code of Conduct. If you experience anything that you believe is a Code of Conduct violation, please do not hesitate to message me. We will make sure to take care of you. And with that, I am excited to introduce our speakers for today. We have Sophia Lafferty-Hess from Duke University, Hua Lung from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, Wanda Marsalek from the University of Minnesota, and Sarah Wright from Cornell University. And they've got a great presentation that will end with some discussion. And at that, I'm just going to turn it over. Take it away, team.
All right. Like Michaela said, thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you for sharing your time. My name is Wanda, and Sophia, Hua, and Sarah and I are here today to share with you what researchers told us about curation services at 6 DCN member institutions. Next slide, please. The Data Curation, or the DCN, takes a collaborative approach to data curation, sharing curation expertise across a network of partner institutions and data repositories. We also take a collaborative approach to our research to make it more robust and to help take care of one another and our workloads. These are the 6 institutions that participated in this project to evaluate satisfaction level with data curation services. And we have more members in the DCN than just these 6. When this particular project began, I think there were about 10 institutions, and so today we have 19. Way to go, DCN. I'd like to think that the DCN's best quality is its people. And for this project, our team was made up of Sarah and Wendy at Cornell, Lisa and I at Minnesota, Hua and Susan at Illinois, Joel and Sophia at Duke, Dave and Mara at Johns Hopkins, and Jake at Michigan. Just a gentle reminder that this project began in 2021. And I share this as a reminder that things take time, things are not fast, and we are not machines. So next slide, please. Of course, we would appreciate if you at some point would read our paper, Understanding the Value of Curation, a survey of researcher perspectives of data curation services from 6 US institutions. But we're going to break it down for you today so that you don't have to necessarily read it cover to cover, but you may find yourself wanting to after this and maybe even citing this work in your future research. I'll start with what we found out in the existing literature. None of this information is new per se, but it's helpful to hear and helps us when we as curators are communicating with researchers and administrators. So we looked to the literature to find out why researchers share their data, primarily advanced research and knowledge, dissemination, collaboration, for future collaboration, accessibility, transparency, and recognition. We've also found that, as folks may understand, that researchers share their data because of funder and journal mandates, and also for overall access, reuse, and preservation. We also looked to the literature to find out why researchers don't share their data. Many suggested that lack of training, lack of time, lack of standards, lack of incentives, and the overall effort required. There is also a fear of getting scooped, and a lot of folks, researchers, or the literature says this, that there is a need for people to be in control of the access and use of their data. Next slide, please. And we also look to the literature to find out what value curation adds to the data sharing process. And we found that researchers appreciate peer review, the metadata enhancement that comes along with it, documentation enrichment, preservation of the data, and discoverability. Curation also enhances quality, longevity, and reusability of the data. A lot of folks talked about how it establishes trustworthiness. And when data curation is provided and shared in repositories, proper citation occurs, and it helps the download count. And this all is used to help show impact of that data. There are some barriers that we found in the literature for researchers curating their own data before sharing. And we found that folks feel that there's a lack of access to standards and templates. And also researchers sometimes don't feel that their documentation is robust at the time of collection and analysis, preventing them from wanting to share. Next slide, please. In late spring of 2021, we sent out an 11-question survey to everyone who had deposited data with the 6 respective repositories over that past year. So from 2020 to 2021. And not just those who have used the DCN curation services. That we just sent this email to researchers who had submitted data sets to these repositories at these institutions. We also shared the dataset link back with those researchers with hope that they would, in their email, asking them to participate in our survey. We shared that link with them, hoping that they would then be able to remember their experience by kind of jogging their memory by clicking on that link to see their amazing curated data set in the repository. And we hope that they would remember it and their experience and share that with us. We sent the Qualtrics survey to 568 researchers and had an overall response rate of 42%. Now going to hand this over to Wall.
Thank you, Wanda. So the first question that we asked the researcher is, did you expect the repository staff to curate your data set? And as Wanda mentioned that we received 238 responses, but there was one outlier where their feed text was completely contradicted with their other responses. So that's why we removed that response. So we have total 237 responses for these questions. So almost 65% of the participants say yes, they expected curation from their repository staff, and around 35% of the participants say they did not expect curation. And the next questions. Next slide, please. Thank you. So a skip logic was applied for the next question, where we ask, were any changes made to your data submission due to the curatorial review? So we apply skip logic. So then for those who say yes, we can ask a follow-up question that what changes were made. And for those who say no, we ask why no changes were made. So 75% of the participants say yes, that changes were made to their data submissions, and 14% say no, and around 11% unsure whether changes were made to their submission or not. And for those who say yes, in total of 180 participants, we asked them what changes were made. So around 8% of them say essential changes were made. So this including an error was corrected. And then around 27% of them say some major changes were made. So this including file uploaded, or file updated, so including documentation added. And then around majority, 63% of them say minimal changes were made. So this including small edit, addition, or typos. And 2% say unsure. For those 34 participants who say no changes were made, we asked them why not. So 94% of them simply indicated that no changes were needed. And one participant, around 3%, indicated that they did not have time to work on any changes. One participant provided a free text that they say the project team members sit on data curation team and provided expert knowledge. So we interpreted this as no changes were made since they work directly with the curator. And the next questions we asked was if they satisfied with the curatorial review that they received. And surprisingly and happily, that 98% of the researchers either strongly or somewhat agree that they were satisfied with the curatorial review that they received. So now I'm going to pass it to Sarah.
Thanks. So this was, of course, fantastic news. And at this point, we wanted to dig a little deeper into their feelings about the value of curation. And so next slide, Michaela. So the next question we asked was whether the curation process helped them feel more confident sharing their data. And happily, over 90% agreed. But at this point, we want to get the audience here involved a little bit. And I promise no breakout rooms, so please don't start leaving. But at this point, we want to pull in a Mentimeter and get you guys involved in answering some of the questions that we asked of researchers. So if you could go to menti.com and use the code that's on the screen right now, rate your response to this statement and see how you guys compare to the researchers that we surveyed. So we're asking you to rate your response to data curation adds value to the data sharing process. I love it. We've even got a few people saying strongly disagree. I'd love to hear in the chat why you feel like you strongly disagree that data curation adds value to the data sharing process. Maybe this is part of the discussion discussion section later on at the end of the presentation. Awesome. So very much like the researchers that we surveyed, it looks like you guys also pretty much strongly agree that data curation adds value to the data sharing process. And so either strongly agree or agree, the majority of you, and over 95% of the researchers that we surveyed also agreed that data curation adds value to the data sharing process. And these are great statistics to have, right? These are wonderful statistics to have to report back to researchers, to report up to administration, et cetera. Michaela, do you want to go to the, yes. So I think next slide. Adds value to the data sharing process. Yeah, so this is what we actually got from researchers. This is how they distributed. And like I said, over 95% of respondents agreed that data curation adds value. And then it looks like about 13% said they somewhat agreed. So it was fantastic statistics to have. But next slide, Michaela. I also really want to emphasize the free text responses that we got. So in putting this survey together, we really struggled with asking for free text responses. I think one of the basic things you learn when you're trying to figure out how to put together surveys is that free text responses, much like breakout rooms in Zoom webinars, often send everybody away from the survey, right? So we really hesitated in including free text responses or questions that required free text responses. However, we thought it was important enough to get responses in the researchers' own words that we did include these questions that required free text responses. And amazingly, we got 179 free text responses to this question of what is the most value-add curation action taken by this repository. And so it was fantastic. We got responses from researchers where they were able to tell us in their own words what was most valuable to them when depositing data and working with the curators. And it provided a lot of qualitative data. But I think I also want to make the point that not only did we learn what's valuable to them in their own words, it also helped us be able to better communicate the value of curation back to researchers. So not only did we get a lot of qualitative data, we also got a lot of verbiage and tools to use in communicating back to the researchers. So I really recommend this as a treasure trove of value add in the researcher's own words. But of course, for this project, we were really interested in actually analyzing this data and doing some qualitative coding. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Sophia, and she'll talk about how we qualitatively coded all of this wonderful treasure trove of information that we got.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So before we go on to that, though, Michaela, do we have one other Mentimeter with this question? I was trying to remember if we were able to set that up, or because we kind of wanted to know from you all what you think is the most value-add curation action. Yes, we do. What is the most value-add curation action taken by this repository? So I want to hear kind of what you guys are thinking before we share more about our coded qualitative analysis. Same Menti, same link. So go to that same link. Use that same code. And I think it'll just, again, this is open-ended, so you should just be able to put in just a couple words. Maybe you'll say metadata or organization or I don't agree. Awareness, that's a great one. So we'll just take 30 seconds to let you guys add some of your thoughts in there. And we'll see a nifty word cloud. Oh, quality control is getting bigger. That one. And safety net. That's an interesting one. Yeah, yeah. Can help protect against those errors, right? Metadata, file formats, multiple metadatas, preservation file formats. So training, I like that one. That's a way that, curation can be training for researchers as well. All right, so we'll give it just like, let's say, 5 more seconds to add your thoughts. Word clouds are also just kind of fun to see. And it looks like more people are saying quality control. I know that's a big one. I know one of the big ones for me, I probably would have put documentation. So I feel like that's a big one that I end up helping researchers with when I'm performing curation. So. All right, well, we're at 30 responses, so we're probably at around 80%. So I think we'll go ahead and go back to the slides and share a little bit more about the qualitative analysis that we did in this project. So we did look at specifically at the question of what is the most value-add curation action taken by this repository. I was lucky enough to be part of the team that helped to perform the qualitative analysis. So what we did is we first took as the foundation some themes that we identified in a companion survey we did on the value of curation, where we actually asked repository staff this exact same question of what do you think is the most value-added curation action taken by your repository. So we used those themes, but we knew we might have to iterate and adjust them some since we were asking a different audience and a different population. So we did use an iterative design model to make modifications to those themes as we read through and coded the statements. We had 3 independent coders that then read through the various different responses and statements and assigned various different themes to those statements. So statements could have more than one theme assigned. Then we came together, the coders, as a group, and we compared our results and built consensus around which specific themes we thought should apply to that statement. Our themes kind of fell into 3 broad buckets, one being those actual curation actions. So which actions did researchers actually say they valued? But some of the statements were a lot more not about a specific curation action, but more about the outcome of the curation process. So we also coded for that aspect of within the data. And then some had information more on kind of limitations around curation. So now you can go to the next slide, Michaela. All right, so this was our first kind of findings from our coding around that idea of curation actions. So this was not too surprising to me, but I was really great to see that one of the highest numbers was around documentation. So over 48 people said that documentation as well as metadata was what they saw as the most value-add curation action. I will say that when we were doing some of our coding, it wasn't always clear whether the participant was actually referencing structured metadata when they said metadata or more general kind of documentation description such as README files. So we kind of brought those 2 together in this high-level documentation category or theme. The other highest was more what we coded as review general. So they weren't saying, oh, we got help with documentation specifically, but they were saying that they really just appreciated having that review of their files done by somebody external to their research project. One of the turn of phrases that really stuck with me that I liked was numerous researchers said they really liked having that second set of eyes on their data. And then as you can see, between 10 and 15, there was also file formats, organization, file checks, and or error correction, and then a few people mentioning things around PI and confidentiality and IP and copyright. Next slide. When looking at the outcomes, one of the things when we were looking at, well, what are they saying they see as that outcome of these curation actions? One of the highest was understandability. So researchers were saying that they felt through curation, they made their data more understandable. And then again, we just had a lot of people, they weren't necessarily talking about a specific outcome, but they were saying, we were just really happy with this process and kind of the outcome of having somebody help and do that curation. And then again, the next ones were use with 34 and access with 33. If you're interested in kind of how we define some of these terms, as we know there can be overlap and they can be sometimes a little squishy, we do have within the paper in the appendix a definition of how we define some of these terms for our coding purposes. Next slide, please, Michaela. All right, so we did also have one other final kind of open text response question to say, is there anything else that you'd like to tell us about your data sharing experience? And again, we had 182 people provide some more information. So I'm just going to read a couple of these quotes because they make me happy at the end of the day. So one was, I love it. I want to share more data this way. Get ready for some cool stuff. Another said, I try hard to make my data good before it ever gets to the repository, and every single time there's been curation, there's always been something that I've missed. I'm very grateful for such careful and helpful curation. It definitely increases my comfort and even pride in the data set. This one's so helpful. I was expecting nothing, but I got a lot of personal help and kindness. Much appreciated. So I'll say that getting to take part in this qualitative analysis, it was both validating for the time and effort that we do put in as curators and really hearing back from our community that they valued what we did. There were some really great quotes. Again, we have shared the data set. We have we de-identified the quotes and went through and made sure we removed any identifying information, but those are available. So if you're interested in looking more deeply at the data, it is in the University of Minnesota's data repositories. So again, thank you all. I'm now going to pass it over to Hua, I think next slide, Michaela, to talk a little bit about not just the research itself, but how some of my colleagues, in my opinion, did some awesome things using that article for outreach and promotion at their own institutions. So, wow.
Thank you, Sophia. Next slide, please, Michaela. So at Illinois, we did a few things to promote the publication of this paper. To be honestly, we don't know for sure the impact on the paper view and download, though I did receive a complimentary email from one of the Illinois Bank depositor about this paper. So yeah, but anyway, we just could like to share with you what we did. So first of all, our director shared the paper to the library lib news. So on library administrator, faculty, staff, and graduate students are on the list. So this is a great way to share our successful paper, as well as let the whole library know more about our services. And then the directors is also have a quarterly meeting with the OVCRI as the Office of Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovations Administrator. So here is where she shared about the article, and surprisingly to me, a week later, I saw it on this week in Illinois Research newsletter. So this is a weekly newsletter from OVCRI to promote Illinois research activities. And we also have a section on our website called Recent News, and we also post this paper on over there as well. So now Wanda will tell you what they did over Minnesota.
Right. Thanks, Wah. Here at the University of Minnesota, we shared the article out with all of library staff in a weekly newsletter called the Monday Memo to just, we do this, we share out publications so that way everyone kind of has an idea of what's going on and how we're all contributing to the field, right? But I kept thinking that we tend to talk to library folks and data curators, and we need to elevate this and get the word out more, get the word out to researchers. And I struggle with hierarchies, but they exist. And so who could we send this up to help the information trickle down? And so I just got an idea one day that I really wanted to send this to the Vice President for Research and Innovation. And I just kind of mentioned that I was going to do this, and no one said no. So I sent it out, and I just want to read the message that I sent to Dr. Priya, because then we did get a response and some more with this. So this is maybe what some folks can do to share your research with your institutions. So I said, hello, Dr. Priya. My name is Wanda Marsalik, and I work with the university libraries as a data curation librarian. One of my primary responsibilities is curating scientific data for the data repository for the University of Minnesota, or DRUM. I recently co-authored an article in PLOS One titled, under the name of the article, I don't need to say that for you all again, that I wanted to share with you. I'm sharing with you our experiences supporting researchers, many of whom are part of NSF centers on campus, such as MRSEC and CSP. The article includes the common qualitative statistics, but I think there's a lot of value in the qualitative data that was accumulated from UMN, as well as the 5 institutions my co-authors are from: Cornell, Duke, Illinois, Johns Hopkins, and Michigan. As researchers are required to share their data more and more due to various mandates, we think it will be helpful to them to hear that they are not alone, don't have to do this on their own, and others are having positive experiences. Thank you for all you do, keeping us reaching further than we thought was possible. And then Dr. Priya replied and said, thank you for sharing this excellent work. Congratulations. I will discuss with Kim, copied here, on how we can share this article across our research community. It will be helpful for everyone. Then Kim chimes in and says, thanks for sharing, Wanda. This is great timing because I'm giving a talk next Friday at the Research Ethics Day on data management practices for non-clinical trial research. I can make reference to your paper in my talk. The data sharing issue is increasingly linked to research integrity as well as data secrecy and can be an indicator of research misconduct. Data sharing and other open science practices can help to buffer well-meaning researchers against potential misconduct claims. I plan to touch on this work in my talk next week. And so just took a chance and sent it, and we had responses. So that was our experience so far here at Minnesota. And let's see, I think next slide. Oh yes, and hey, here are some of our publications. You can see the PLOS One article and our data set that we've shared here. And then also the Value of Curation survey with an upcoming paper. And next slide. And hey, soon you'll be able to see this next paper coming to PLOS One. And so we can't wait for that to be shared as well.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry, Wanda, I think, am I supposed to wrap us up and have some discussion now?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we encourage folks to use our methods and to do something similar at your institutions too. So I just wanted not just sharing the data to share it, but to reuse it, right? So thanks.